All right, we're going to get going here. So welcome to our first kickoff event for the Entrepreneurship Center. Really excited to have Larry Weber here. We were out earlier, just amazing stories. And so this will be a little bit informal. He's going to talk a little bit about customers in the digital age, but very interactive. So think about questions, think about things. There are a couple of things I'm already going to ask him that he piqued my interest. Well, so this is not just a very formal lecture style. This is going to be much more interactive than some of the ones in the past. But I'm going to take advantage of a couple minutes here to do some infomercial. So for those of you who haven't yet been down to the Entrepreneurship Center, please come down. Wide range of resources for you to utilize, from coaching to boot camps and seminars like this. Funding, wide range of funding for you, depending where you are, early stage idea, later stage idea. And then a makerspace, not just for those who know how to use 3D printers, but they have programs for newbies, how to start to learn to use that personal and for your projects for UNH. Couple of upcoming events. So a week from tomorrow is our first boot camp, and this is idea creation. Really excited to have Omar coming from Goddard Technologies. They're down in Beverly, Mass. They do product design and development for large and small scale companies. So hands-on problem solving through product design. So the whole idea of this is to help you think about how do you see a problem, how do you do some ideation. You don't have to come with an idea. The concept here is to think about what that process is. That's going to be super dynamic. For those of you who are doing I2 Passport, that's 3,000 Visa credits. That's the biggest one you can get. So that's a big one to give you a jump start at the semester. Also, when you came in, hopefully you saw the note card, the postcards. I don't know if we have them for the events. And on our website, unh.edu/eCenter, is a wide range of all the events that we have coming up for the semester. The Maurice Prize, so today actually is the opening of that. So this is a new prize that we have. So a UH alum endowed $150,000 to us, and that will throw off $5,000 a year. And unlike the Social Venture Challenge or the Holloway Prize, the idea of this is to encourage you as students to have an idea, share what that idea is, maybe who your team is, and then work on that for a period of time, and then you're not judged to win the $5,000 on whether it was successful and a perfectly put together idea, product, business plan. It's really about sharing your experience and what did you learn? And did you fail? Did you have to reinvent yourself? Did you have to take a different direction? A lot, which we'll talk about today, is about customer discovery. So those of you who have spent time with me know I talk about that a lot. It's not about what I think about your idea. It's really about what your potential customer or your customer thinks about your idea. So this is a really neat $5,000. You can use it for whatever you want. So Fred Maurice is 92, 93 years old. He's like, I don't care if those kids have a party with it. So just know that what he really wants to do is to encourage students to get engaged and just have an idea and start down that path, take that first step. So if you go to mauriceprize.com, it's just a shorter URL for you to take a look at that. Pretty simple. If you're here and you're interested about ideas and innovation, I highly encourage that. I2 Passport, anyone here not know about I2 Passport? That's a great sign. So thanks for being here. So this is our second year officially of doing this, so $25,000 thanks to Harry Patton, class of 58, to launch this for us. I always say this could be you, so it's as much about the big oversized check as it is the real money. And as of this morning, these are the top 5. So I'm sure Dylan must be here, right? Yep. Brandon, I saw Tyler. Oops, somebody can get a jump on Tyler. Jamie's here, and Troy here. All right, so the fact that you guys are here, you're going to get, I think it's 2,000 Visa stamps, so you're going to already jump up. So keep track of this. So thanks to TJ and Max. I'm not sure if Max is here yet. TJ's here. TJ and Max worked with us this summer and actually helped automate this. So the swipe system you had when you came in, that's all the software thanks to TJ and Max. So you can also, it's not a complete app, but you can do a web, save the web page to your phone top, and then you can register for events, look at your Visa stamp credits from there as well. So pretty cool stuff. So thank you to our sponsors, Wild Catalyst Network. That's basically an alumni group that provides funding. So all the funding for the eCenter is external. So everything we rely on is from alumni and corporations. So we're very thankful for Wild Catalyst to help be able to rent this room and to have Larry here. So I'm going to talk a little about Larry and then go from there. So it's a very long and amazingly impressive bio, but I'm going to do some highlights for those of you who didn't read it. And I know students don't read that much, so I'm going to help you out here. So Larry's known as an expert on PR, and it's funny, we talked about my very first career, before you guys were probably born, in fact I know before you guys were born, long before you were born, was in commercial real estate in Cambridge, and Larry's company actually was in one of the buildings. So I'm like, oh, I remember you're at 1 Main Street. You just don't lose data in your head. Anyway, I digress. But I remember it was actually a very small PR firm, and remember hearing about it focused on technology for obviously emerging technology base out of Cambridge and within 128 and 495. And then it grew to be the largest PR firm, media relations firm in the world. So a very big jump, very successful entrepreneur. And so today Larry's focus is on that marriage of technology and marketing and sort of that powerful platform of, you guys have probably heard this, authentic marketing. Right, so there's so much out there, particularly in the digital area. How do you make it authentic? How do you make your customers, connect with you? So hopefully later on we'll hear about, some of the companies he's worked with. You guys have heard of AT&T, Coca-Cola, GE, General Motors, Elon Musk, and the list goes on and on. So I think we'll hear some of these inside stories, which is pretty cool. And then I don't actually know we have all this time. So Larry's written 5 books, so on top of everything else. And then he's been generous enough to be able to have a book for all of you guys who've been here to really, I just started reading it this weekend, really neat read, really neat stuff. No matter what you do, and one of the things we always talk about, and Jen always, where's Jen? She always talks to me about, this isn't about just startup companies, right? So no matter what your field is or what college you're in, it's really about seeing a problem and coming up with some type of solution for that. And it can be a nonprofit, it can be a little widget, it can be something bigger. It's something that you're passionate about to be able to fix. And so always look at everything that we do through that prism of how do you present yourself? Maybe you're doing your senior capstone project. How do you think about who your customer is? Who might be your faculty advisor? It might be other people. So think about it sometimes in a broader spectrum of customers than necessarily sort of a business type of relationship. So I could go on and on, but you're not here to listen to me. So I'll let Larry start, and then we'll go from there. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Ian. Okay, so how many people have Googled already today? How many people have Googled more than 10 times? 20 times? 30 times? Wow. So, anybody go on Facebook today? More than once? Instagram? More than once? LinkedIn? Not as much. Yeah. Anybody go on a news site? A traditional news site? By that I mean like CNN, ABC, CBS. Yeah. The Skim? Anybody? No, don't know that one. Okay. And anybody bought from Amazon in the last month? Parents buy on Amazon? I was on a panel, Jeff Bezos, he runs Amazon. And, the interviewer asked him how it felt to be the biggest retailer on the planet, and he looked like really pissed. And so the interviewer goes, "What's wrong?" He goes, "I'm not the biggest retailer on the planet." And he goes, "Well, what are you?" And he goes, "I'm the biggest sucker of data on the planet there is, especially about customers and what they want, what they do." I was telling Ian, anybody have an Alexa at home? Or because not that popular. They'll eventually give them away, so I would grab one when they start giving away Alexas. Everybody know what Alexa is? Yeah, okay. So I've had one now for 3 years. I think it's about 3 years old, and mostly I just, say, "Can you play this song by the Rolling Stones?" or, "What's the weather?" or, "What's the news?" That kind of thing. But my wife had left me a note the other day where, "Can you buy some paper towels?" So I said, okay, so I'm going to try Alexa and paper towels. I hadn't tried this yet. All right, maybe you guys already have, but so I went, Alexa, can you get a case of Bounty for me? Case of Bounty, $29, will be delivered tomorrow. I said, wow. So I came home the next day, there was a case of Bounty. So you start to see, one thing I'd like you to know right away is I don't believe there's anything completely new and innovative. So I think everything is evolved and everything has a past. Everything comes from some DNA. It doesn't come from a completely clean slate. And you can name any innovation, and if I know it, I'll take you back to where Facebook goes back to Friendster, goes back to what we were talking about, and very narrow. Most innovations are extremely narrow, very focused, very simple. And they just ultimately, if they succeed, that's where you get the money and the people to start doing what Amazon's doing, which is basically building 5 monopolies. All right, and he'll probably do that before the government has any sense of what's going on. He owns the cloud, 72%, all your data. All right, obviously retail. All right, he's going to own groceries. All right, and delivery of that, logistics. Going to own logistics, and then all the categories, right? Books, you name them, all the way down the line. I think there's 2 people that are competing for the heart and soul of the next generation internet for you guys, and that is Google and not Facebook, Google and Amazon. And I actually think Amazon's probably going to win. So I would watch them closely if I were you, as young people, to see what they're doing and learn from what they're doing. I think their approach to innovation is very narrow, around specific things, and they're very smart users of software. All right. And they're also very smart at what has to be done, whether you are in a startup or you're at a big company, and that's what I call the customer experience. So I'm going to tell you one story about Amazon, and then I'll move on to some other things. So there's this thing in marketing called a permission-based email. Everybody can guess what that is? All right, that's like where you already are with a bank, or you're the customer of something, and they have your email. And so you don't ever read the small print, you can opt out, right? But they have permission to send you an email. So about 1.5 years ago, it's in this book actually. And then also, before I end, besides taking all your questions, make sure I talk about my 6th book that I'm working on. I'd love some of your ideas for that. I think I'm writing it for your age group and a little above. So you got to tell me if I'm full of it or not. So I think that will be good. All right. So Amazon sends me a permission-based email, and it says, "Dear Mr. Weber, we know you like John Updike." Everybody heard of John Updike? He was a famous American novelist. Okay. And he died a couple years back. And how do they know that I like John Updike? Come on, somebody. How does Amazon know I like John Updike? I bought some of his books, right? So they had the data, right? So, and they said, very clever, right? This is when they were just starting to put videos on all of Amazon, right? So videos of authors and, lots of different categories. But anyway, they said, we have got some videos of John Updike reading from his famous novels called Rabbit. There was this character. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Just, you have to remember that got me sucked in, right? So I put that back in my mind. And a few days later, I went to my library. I live outside of Boston. And I got a glass of wine, and I went on Amazon. Now, you're all going to say, get a life, because I ended up being on Amazon for 90 minutes, okay? Now, most people, right, are like in and out, right? They have one thing that they need, and they're out of there. But I was like, I had some time. Television was boring. There wasn't any football games on. My kids are all gone. So it was dogs. My wife was out. So it's me, dogs, and my computer. And so I go and I watch these videos, right? Then I notice that there's other videos of things I might be interested in. Who's the software guy? Here? What's a reference engine software? Do you know? Yeah. All right. Have you all been on Amazon, right? Or how about on YouTube or Spotify or whatever, right? What's the reference software do? If you like this, you'll probably like that, right? So it's looking at all the data, and how many have experienced that, right? Like everybody, right? All right, so, and that's only getting better, by the way, reference software, and so is voice. We should also talk about the technologies I think that are going to be hugely impactful of your lives and your kids' lives, because I think they're already laid out. I don't think there's a lot of new technologies. There'll be, sort of fine-tuning of the technologies. So anyway, anybody heard of William Faulkner? This is an important one to remember, even if you haven't heard of him. All right, a great American writer, died many years ago, but he won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1949. William Faulkner, just remember that name. That's all you have to remember, all right? But I didn't know that somebody had a video, and it happened to be Amazon, got the copy of the video of him giving his acceptance speech of a Nobel Prize for Literature. So, well, that's cool. So I watched that. And then I had just been up at Dartmouth, further north here, where my son is, and I had found out that Dr. Seuss went to Dartmouth, and he had left all the money for Cat in the Hat, which, believe it or not, is $10 million a year. Do you believe that they sell that many cats in the hat, for the medical school up there? So I went and watched Dr. Seuss, videos too. Then I went to read some reviews of my most recent book. And I was really mad because there was this guy from Taipei who hated the book, So I'm like, man, but I couldn't give him his money back or anything like that. And then I had just finished a book by a guy named Malcolm Gladwell, if you heard of this guy. He's famous for The Tipping Point. I actually thought The Outlier was probably one of the better books if you want a great book to read. But he had just written a book that I read and I didn't like either, called What the Dog Saw. So I wrote a review of that, and I posted that review. Has anybody ever posted a review of anything, like a restaurant or a hotel or anything? So most people have done some kind of review, okay? Who started that, by the way? It wasn't Yelp. It's a company based out of Boston called TripAdvisor. Anybody heard of TripAdvisor? All right. He was the guy that innovated that whole kind of, review system, and that Yelp was built on for a while. Does anybody even use Yelp anymore? Probably not, yeah. Okay, you guys are like third generation internet, So anyway, then I bought about 15 books. And I spent, about $200. Bought some books for myself, one for my wife, a couple for clients. And guess what? I looked at about 15 books that I didn't buy. All right, and all in all, I'm on there for 90 minutes. Wow. What a marketing job that was to a customer. All right? And guess what they got? I got what I wanted. I was doing something social, right? Sort of adding a review. I also was entertained a bit, right? Watching videos. E-commerce. I bought stuff. Besides the money, what else did Amazon get? Data, right? They knew what I bought and what I didn't buy. All right, I'm not on Amazon for 2 weeks and I go on. What does it say? The landing page. Welcome back, Mr. Weber. Would you like to buy an advanced copy of the new biography of William Faulkner for $5 off? Yes! What just happened? What did that software, what did that experience do for me, all right, to do? It might not have worked for you exactly, but that's where this is all going, all right? That's where the idea of building customer experiences and putting customers at the center of everything and understanding everything. I hope I don't offend anybody by saying, forget privacy, all right? It is gone. I think where we'll have that fight again, privacy, is when health data is shared. I think that's when you'll start seeing people, you're not allowed to know I'm taking Lipitor, all right, for my high cholesterol. I don't want anybody to know that, all right? So, but as far as I like striped dresses, who cares, As long as the loyalty comes in. If I was your age and I was interested in marketing, I'd figure out a loyalty company. Some kind of creativity and innovation around loyalty. Because what's going to happen? What is loyalty? All right, it's right. How many of you have a Starbucks card or a Dunkin' Donuts card? I mean, right? Everybody, yeah, And the originators of loyalty programs, I have a whole chapter on it. It's actually highly boring to study, but it probably would be a very successful business to look at. But loyalty programs were started in the 1980s by American Express. And the idea and the objective was to not let you use your points to buy stuff very easily. So it was like the opposite of what a loyalty program should be, right? And what you're going to see now, there's loads of innovations. We went through Groupon, is what I called, everybody heard of Groupon? They are what I call a bridge technology. And that's another thing you should study, is things that aren't necessarily going to be a long-term innovation of themselves, but they're between the old coupon that your mother or grandmother or grandfather or or father used to cut out. I mean, do you believe people used to cut out coupons, all right, $1 off my Wheaties and take it in to the grocery store? All right, that's just unbelievable. But anyway, the bridge technologies are ones that will go from there to what is going to be sort of the son or daughter of Groupon, which, mark my word, somebody's working on that. It's just buried in your smartphone, that as long as your smartphone's on, you don't have to do anything to manage your loyalty. Nothing, zero, nothing. So that when I walk into Brooks Brothers, everybody heard of Brooks Brothers? All right, and I like button-down shirts. I walk in, my smartphone's on, and I buy 3 shirts. And guess what surprises me when I'm checking out? This is at a physical store. The person goes, "Hey, Mr. Weber, 2 of those shirts are free if you want to use your points." Wow, that's great. How cool is that? Thank you. I'll use my points. So I only spend $60 for 1 shirt, but I got 3. And guess what? Do I feel good about Brooks Brothers? Yeah. So I'm on a panel with a guy who started a company called Starbucks in Washington about a year ago. And trying to remember Howard Schultz. And after the panel, he said, "Would you like to be who's gone to Starbucks here?" Okay. So he goes to me, "Would you be sort of a test or a guinea pig for one of our marketing programs that we're fooling around with?" I said, "Sure. That'd be so interesting since I go to Starbucks a lot." Okay. So I gave him my card. He said, "I'll give it to our person that's running this program in Seattle." And so he gives the program to it, I guess, but I never hear anything for like 2 months. I don't hear anything, and finally I get an email. "Hi, this is Cynthia in marketing at Starbucks, and I understand you were willing to be on our sort of guinea pig marketing program." I said, "Sure. So would you fill out this sort of," it wasn't exactly a Survey Monkey. Does everybody know what a Survey Monkey is? Obviously. All right, and so it was sort of designed like a Survey Monkey, which, by the way, I thought would never take off, but it's like, oh my God, 5 questions, so it's easier. And did you know more women fill out surveys than men, almost by 10 to 1? I wonder why that is, but anyway, that's a side fun fact. But so I filled it out. The first question is, what's your favorite drink when you go to Starbucks? And I said, okay, I liked iced espresso. All right, so I usually get strong, get it going in the day. Then it said, if you order food at Starbucks, what would you usually order? And I said, probably a breakfast sandwich, sort of like makes sense. And then, do you travel? What time do you usually buy, your coffee, blah, blah, blah. And then will you give us your phone number? And I said, sure, why not? So I gave him my phone number, and then I didn't hear anything for like a few weeks, and I'm in London, England, of all places. All right, and I'm with my middle daughter, and it's about 8 in the morning in London, and I get a text from Starbucks. So I'm looking at the text, and it says, "Hi, Larry. If you'd like your free iced espresso and 25 pence off a breakfast sandwich, please come across the street to 235 Kensington High Street and just show your phone, and you can have that. And I'm going, cool. Of course, my daughter, who's just a couple years older than you, thought this was creepy as hell. Because she said, like, Dad, they could like have a drone take you out. You know, they know exactly where you are, you know, kind of thing. And I was like, no, Julia, I think this is like really cool. And so I want to see if it really works. So we went, and I go to it, and I said, could I have, you know, an iced espresso? And by the way, I think I get that free, and I get some money off my breakfast sandwich. He said, well, hold up your phone. Sure enough, free. And 25 pence off the sandwich. Hello? How cool is that? So you start to see these themes, at least I do, and having been around for 35, almost 40 years in marketing, you know, back when we had faxes. Anybody know what a fax is? But anyway, you know, so, you know, all the way up, and you see this evolution of getting closer and closer to the customer and understanding more and more the data around a customer, and more the context of how to present something to a customer. What if they would have presented me with a free herbal tea? And I hate herbal tea. Wouldn't that have set our relationship back? Right? So all of a sudden I'm going, Facebook, you're not really that smart about me. That offends me. I thought we were buddies, you know? And you gotta get to know and get to understand and work through that. The other thing I would probably add there, one more story about this kind of new technologies, is I think everything's moving visually, obviously. How many of you have been on YouTube the last day or two? Yeah, so, I mean, I can't believe it's taken this long, but YouTube will be the biggest search engine by 2022, I would guess. It'll surpass Google, because you will be searching everything visually. And if they get their act more together, that's where you're going to go, right? Versus Google, you know, to look at something. All right. But what I like to say about the movement toward visual is, I was in charge of, like I had mentioned before, looking at the colleges for my kids. And so I would go sit down in my study again, and I'd look at websites. I haven't looked at UNH's website, but it'd be very funny if you pulled it up while I tell you this story. Anybody that has just the landing page, okay? Because I looked at 30 colleges, all right? And I'm convinced that the same agency did all the college websites, because every landing page had a African American student, an Asian American student, and a white student, all laughing and carrying a backpack across a beautiful green with trees changing color. See? Is that UNH? Yeah, there you go. Now, I have not looked, okay? And then the exact same things, right? The same prompts were about us, right? Visit us, you know, all that kind of stuff. So finally, I'm on this last college, which I wasn't that impressed with, and I'm like, all these look the same. I don't know what to do. And by the way, we would go visit some, and I'd be stuffing one of those big bean bags, you know, canvas bags with all the paper stuff. And I laid it out. I put an extra leaf on the table at home and laid out, you know, Georgetown and, you know, UMass and all these schools, all beautiful for my daughter to look at. And she didn't look at one physical brochure, not one, nothing, not one. And this college I looked at, finally the last website was Trinity College in Connecticut. And just by way of doing, I would always just click on About Us, just to see where they'd take me. And guess what? The screen is like completely empty, instead of like all the other ones that had things. And all of a sudden, this girl comes out with Trinity's hoodie on, and she drops her backpack and looks straight out at me. And she goes, "Hi, my name's Vanessa. This school has changed my life. Come with me on a virtual tour." I went, "Go, girl." I was like, this is like so cool, you know? And it was like so easy to use the video technology, all right, and the visual technology to really get closer to me immediately, right? The other thing I want you to try something, this is a whole sidecar, is try searching on the UNH website sometime and see how long it takes you to get the right answer. I went on one of the fanciest universities in this country website, Princeton University, and I just wanted the names of the trustees of the college. And guess what the first thing I got when I searched on their site? A news release from 4 years earlier, all right, about somebody appointed to the board. So the search engine technology, another thing that's very important for customer connectivity and customer understanding. My father is 89. This summer he looked up, I took him out for dinner, and he looked up out of the blue, he goes, "Google sucks." I said, "Dad, why are you saying Google sucks?" He goes, "Well, first of all, I didn't know all those first things were ads." I said, "How do you think they made more money, than anybody else?" And then he said something very interesting to me, is that he said, "I just ask a simple question like, what are the side effects of this new prescription I'm taking? And I get 10,000 answers, So, the world of search is going to have to move to what? More edited search, more shared search, far more focused search, all right, and we're going to see a lot more happening there. Media, well, marketing, I think I'm about done there. The very simple way to look at marketing is that there's only 3 types of media. So don't let everybody confuse you about how complex media might be getting, all right? First, there's paid media. Everybody know what paid media is, right? How often do you watch commercials anymore? Do you guys ever watch a TV commercial? No. You know why there's more and more live shows on TV? Because it's harder to get rid of the ad. So that's why you're seeing more and more of that. But how many of you just Netflix or, yeah, it's so. All right, so paid media is going to continue, go down. Why the influx? I think, too, besides the fake news and all this, stuff that's happening right now, besides trying to change people's opinions, I think the money's looking for somewhere to go. So the money that used to be, all right, $9 billion in the United States alone on paid advertising, that's looking for some place to go. And I think they're looking for these kinds of sites that you can start to tell a story that you might think is true. I actually think we're going to have an era of validation more in your guys' younger lifetime, where it's going to swing back to truth-telling, much software filters that are demanding accuracy and validity. And I think we should push more and more for that kind of thing so that we're not taken for a ride on all this. The 2 rising areas of media are going to what I call owned and earned. Let's do owned. Anybody want to guess what owned media is? All right, it's the stuff you create yourself. So it's the stuff you go on a website at a company, or you go on even UNH's website, stuff that is created for a specific audience or specific consumer, customer. That's owned media, and you're seeing more and more of that. There's a great owned media thing I think you'd love to watch because it uses advanced virtual reality. Everybody know what VR is? Okay. It's so cool, and it's a business-to-business company called Lockheed Martin. So sometime, tonight or tomorrow, and you have a moment in the cafeteria or something, look at Lockheed Martin Trip to Mars, and you'll be blown away about, and that is a perfect example of owned media. What they did was they used technology, VR technology from Oculus. People know that company that Facebook bought. And they put it on the actual windows of a bus. And they made it so that you didn't have to put any, Google goggles on or, kind of thing. So the kids all were 12 years old, they all got up on a field trip, and they're in Washington, D.C., and all this bus started to do was go around Washington, D.C., but all of a sudden they flipped on the VR, and the kids thought they were on Mars. So all the VR on all the windows was completely looked like you were on Mars, And then there was a teacher talking about the different landscape on Mars. So this use of these new technologies and combination of owned media and experiences to get closer to customers are only going to get more and more important. Software, how many of you know how to program? 2, I can't emphasize enough, if I was your age, to just take one course in programming, just one. Not that you have to program at all, but just that you understand the basics of how software works. That's all. And you must have loads of entry-level courses here, right? And as boring as it might be for some of you that might be a English major or a history major or a business major, software is going to be so important in your lives. It is going to be so important for when you make business decisions on how to use it to get closer to customers or how to serve customers better. And everybody's heard about AI and artificial intelligence. The smarter software companies are using AI to actually write its own code, so it's making software better, even without developers, all right, who are just putting in some of the rules. So just understanding the basic principles of software development, I think, is going to give you a jump on other people as you're looking for jobs or you're thinking of starting something. I think that would be a real good idea. So technologies, I would look at software. I would look at some of the marketing automation software companies. If you're interested in marketing and customer connectivity, these are companies called Marketo, Marketo, Eloqua, which was just bought by Oracle, or there's one in Cambridge, Mass, called HubSpot, which is a very popular company right now for a lot of young people. All right, started by Dharmesh and Brian Halligan. Great company, doing some interesting things on marketing software. So I would look at that. I'd look at loyalty technologies. I'd look at virtual reality. I'd at least understand what AI does. It's funny that everybody's talking about how AI is so brand new. We launched AI companies in 1985, 86, 87, yeah. Palladium, Bachman, Symbolics. Oh my God, And so AI has been around. It just hasn't, again, evolved to a place where now it's going to be in most things. We are lucky. One of the clients we represent is Watson from IBM. So we had Watson on Jeopardy about 2 years ago, which was sort of fun. So if you go to Watson's website now, RacePoint, my company's answering a lot of those questions. That's a secret, but because the computer can't completely understand real language completely yet. There's still some of that. Voice, which has been around for 40 years, voice activation, do you believe that? All right, Dragon Systems was early on, and we're just now perfecting. I always like doing this poll. My wife, I hardly ever dictate a text. I don't know why, but I'm just always thumbs, okay? But my wife will never use her thumbs or her fingers. She's always, and it turns out that her texts go on and on and on. So I'm just wondering how many people dictate their texts? See, not very many. Isn't that interesting? How come? You're just used to using your fingers? Is that, yeah. You think you'll ever use your voice or no?
I don't want people to hear what I'm saying privately.
Yeah. Well, my wife goes walks in the garden and stuff like that, or I come home and it's her and the dogs. I think she's talking to the dogs, kind of thing. So, but obviously texts, are, how many texts do you guys probably send a day? More than 50? Yeah. Isn't that amazing? Can you imagine living without texting? No. If that's a technology innovation, is that the one that probably is most used, would you think? Probably, yeah. And email, does everybody still use email because they have to? Yeah. Do you all submit papers by email or Dropbox? Do you still do physical papers? You print them out? Really? Some of the professors have you print them out? Wow. That's interesting. Yeah. What other technologies do you guys like that are sort of cool before we move into some other areas here?
Autonomous vehicles.
Hmm?
Autonomous vehicles. Autonomous vehicles.
Yep, autonomous vehicles. You think there'll be driverless cars sooner or later?
We'll define autonomous.
Nobody's driving it.
There's 4 layers of autonomy. I think we'll definitely reach number 3.
Yeah.
Numbers.
You know who the pioneer of autonomous vehicles was?
MIT.
John Deere. You know, the tractor company? Yeah. Never got any credit for it, you know, but they were the first ones to explore satellite managing a tractor at night, you know. Of course, it's a lot easier, right, to just have a vehicle going up and down rows than, you know, trying to pass cars or, you know, do other things. Yeah, I think autonomous vehicles will be big. Elon Musk, who I've met, is, you know how he's sort of intrigued with space, but it turns out he's actually more intrigued with the technology of going to space and how you would use that to get from Boston to Shanghai in like an hour, you know, without getting sick or, you know, which is sort of interesting and cool. So looking at that. The book, by the way, I'm working on right now is called Reinventing Good. And the idea is about that I think people, especially your age, are going to look to start companies that actually have a moral purpose as well as make money. So the idea is that there's 4 strategies that are going to be worked on in unison for companies of today and the future. That's having the business strategy. So what are you in to do? What problem are you solving? And Ian was right, you know, no company's going to be successful unless you solve a problem. You just can't develop something and throw it out there anymore, you know. The next part is I'm not calling it marketing strategy anymore. I'm calling it engagement strategies. So how do you engage in your different constituencies or customers through content? The 4th strategy is what I call innovation or technology strategy. So what is it that you have that's innovative? And or are you buying your innovation or technology strategy? So that's something that's interesting. And the 4th pillar is I call the moral strategy or the moral purpose strategy. So what do you think John Deere's moral purpose would be? So its innovation is it's collecting data to have farms be more productive. All right, so its business is selling tractors and actually software and data around better farms. Its engagement strategy, we have loads of ideas for engaging farmers, you know, people that develop data software, you know, for farms, precision agriculture. Innovation, it just bought an AI company, but its moral strategy is how are you going to feed 2 billion more people in the next 25 years on the planet? So every company, this is Facebook's problem, it doesn't have a moral strategy right now, and I think it's starting to stumble. I think it's also having trouble because it comes from a long line of technology in this country, which is, by the way, brilliant. We're the best software people in the world by far. And that's why we have an iPhone. A little bit for design, as you had pointed out, Ian, but mostly because software, because you can do this on the, on the screen and so forth. By the way, I had a 3-year-old in our office a few weeks ago, and she went up to the big screen and was trying to go like this, and it wouldn't move, and she said broken, but anyway. You know, Facebook, as I was saying, which I find great. Facebook was founded on fun, was founded on connections, was mostly about dating in a lot of ways early on at Harvard. But the interesting thing is it came, though, from the history of technology companies that would always put out a platform. All right, do you follow me? They would always just, here's my invention, and tell me if you like it. But they wouldn't say, if you use it for bad stuff, not my problem. You know, use it for good stuff, great, but you know, not my problem. And now it is their problem. So Google was in Washington today. It got overshadowed by the Las Vegas news, but so Google was lucky in the news cycle here, even though it's a sad thing. But you know, they were there to get grilled on why they don't have more of a moral purpose basically. They don't say that in the government, but you're responsible for your platform as well. You can't protect everything, but you have to take some responsibility for having, validity, sites that are tested, things that are used for bad things, so that we're policing somehow. And I think they should get together, Facebook, with the other technology companies and be more like, you guys were probably not even born yet, but Hollywood got together. Do they still have movie ratings like G, R? Do they still have those? Yeah. Show how many movies I go to. But anyways, that was the industry getting together to develop that before a government or anybody sort of decided to do that. And I think that's what Facebook, Google, Amazon should all get together and sort of self-police themselves about their platforms. And I think that would be good. The web, of all my career, I've launched loads of companies, from LinkedIn to, you wouldn't even know most of the software companies, but, and a lot of products and things, but I'm most proud of HTML. Everybody know what that language is? All right, that we launched for Tim Berners-Lee. And he said to me in 1993, do you like the World Wide Web as a name? And I didn't know what he was talking about. So again, that's only 24 years ago that we met at 101 Main Street, and he was presenting HTML, hypertext markup language, all right, which was later over the internet, which, again, what problem was he solving? He was a researcher in Switzerland and couldn't share his data and his graphics with other researchers. So that's where he said, I'm going to fix that and do something where I can share, kind of thing. Last thing I'll cover on all this stuff is measurement. And because if I had $1 for every CEO that says, yeah, that's fine, Larry, you talk a good game, but how do you measure it? How are you impacting the way certain marketing programs work? And all I'll say is digital is very easy to measure, because if somebody's opening something or somebody's sharing something. The problem we're having right now is the broadcast era, which started with radio, about 18, how old's radio? Maybe 1910, something like that. Am I too early? Anyway, so we had broadcast era all the way up. Your parents grew up on television like I did, all right? What's broadcast, right? It's one way, and now we're getting into the era of engagement, right? So you're actually engaged in something. I mean, what happens when the facial recognition technology in your screen, right, knows it's you or knows you're not in the room, and it knows when your dad's in the room, and it sends an ad for a more expensive wine to your dad. That's right around the corner, stuff like this, okay? Or it sends an offer to you because it knows you're in the room, all right? A little scary, right? Because now they know all that kind of information and what going. But where I was going with measurement is the broadcast era in Madison Avenue has had decades to perfect sort of cost per, lead and specific measurements that are still taught today, but no one has, or like companies like Nielsen should have done this long ago, is no one has taken the unstructured data side of the world, right? Here's another thing you should know today. There's the structured data world, which we have all grown up in, and that's all very straightforward linear data. And then there's the unstructured data world, which is Facebook and conversations you're having, all right? And no one's really learned how to measure the unstructured side of things, which is what? It's very simple. Why Amazon knew I was on Amazon for 90 minutes, right? So they're one of the few companies that is going, wow, look, we got an average of 32 minutes, going on. And, think of how many different offers or how many times the reference engine can be used, et cetera. Very cool. The other one is, how many times do you share something a day? With, something that you want your friend to know. I mean, you must, right? Share. Well, where's a share index? Why don't we know that you shared that about this product or this event or this, and so, because that data is available. So what's happened is nobody's done it in a nice, beautiful package of measurement like they have from the broadcast world. That's a whole nother innovation. If somebody wanted to be an entrepreneur around the measurement of unstructured data, if you get, there needs to be companies in that, like there needs to be in loyalty, all right? And if there's one thing we don't need is a lot more applications. I mean, I'm sure that we need some that are innovative, but I have too many now. I don't know about you guys, but I have way too many apps. Although I do like Waze. Does anybody else like Waze? I like Waze. Favorite apps, new apps, anybody? Come on. Favorite apps?
Hopper. Hopper.
Good one. Everybody know what that one is?
Basically, if you want to travel by plane, you put in where you're leaving, where you're going, and the dates, and it does a statistical analysis of looking over the last 5 years of fluctuations of when to buy and the pricing, and it overlays. It looks every single day, and then it tells you price is still high. Wait a week. Oh, buy now. Last day to buy. It's going to go up from here. It's amazing. I just used it a couple times. So accurate. Saved hundreds of dollars.
Spot Hero. Spot Hero.
What's Spot Hero do?
It's a place for parking garages because they have hundreds of spaces they don't fill. If you know you're going to go somewhere, you can order and reserve your spot online for all these different parking garages. So instead of like $30 total for a day, you can like park in Boston for less than $5 and stuff. But
How is the space saved? Like, how do they?
it's because they know on average they don't sell at least 200, 300 spots. So those are reserved for these kind of apps that take those extra.
So it might say, like, instead of save for Zipcar, it might say save for Spot Hero or something.
Well, they won't even like post it, but if you like go online and they've opted into it, like Boston is full of them, you can say, I want to park here from this time to this time. They'll give you the far reduced rate. And then when you get to the door, instead of punching in your ticket, you just hold up your phone. Guy reads it, sees, lets you in, lets you go.
Yeah, cool. Anybody else have a cool one? Nobody uses the dating sites, do they? No.
No, not that. But my family uses Life 360. So my parents are always concerned when my little brother gets to school or gets somewhere, so it'll send them a notification saying Connor got to school safely, so he doesn't have to always remember to check in with them. So, I mean...
Especially good for little brothers, yeah.
We're not the biggest fan of it, that they can always track us, but I think it's good for letting parents know. And our sports team uses it, so when we check in the morning.
Yep.
Found an app called USafeUS.
USafe US?
Yeah, USafeUS. It came out by I forget who it was, but it was some group here, Phi Sharp, that came out. It's sexual harassment and rape prevention app. Pretty much, it gives you the ability, so like if you're ever in a bad situation with drinking, you have the ability just to like press a button and you can text your friends, or you can text them when you should be back from a party or something.
That's cool.
I'll have to second that. It's a cool app. Right.
Which one?
USafeUS.
It's about your
How about Venmo? Does everybody use that here? Yeah. My son Jeffrey's 20, just all the time, Venmoing. That was sort of a good one. How does Venmo make money? I don't even know. Do they take a little bit or no? No.
They don't use a credit card.
Hmm.
They hold the money in their account until
Yeah.
someone transfers it and they make interest.
So they can make some interest on it while, yeah, okay.
Yeah, they don't get transferred. Or
Yeah.
it takes like a couple days for it to transfer. They just bill on the interest.
That's cool. Yeah.
This is just on Venmo. So it like costs them like $2 for every transfer or something. So like I know people who would just for fun like send a couple cents to each other just to cost Venmo money, because just cause.
Yeah.
Robinhood. It's good.
Rummages?
Yeah.
Robinhood.
Robinhood. Oh yeah, sure. Yep. Yeah. Well, that's good. All right. Well, how about some questions from you guys? I'll answer anything on companies that are cool, where I think the jobs are going to be when you graduate, marketing, companies, software, Facebook.
What innovations do you see dominating the retail shopping experience in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I don't feel real good about physical shopping. I think the physical shops that are going to do well for your generation are going to be smaller places, very focused on a specific type of product, so less about a lot of stuff, you know. So CVS, like in Walgreens, will always probably be pretty good because you want to go see, you know, except for the basics, like if you toothpaste and things, but you know, Staples is a classic, you know, that they were my client, and we constantly were telling them, why are you building bigger stores? You know, first of all, you know, the experience of a Staples, like how many people really get enjoyment out of looking for ink cartridges? I mean, you know, it's like, I mean, hello. At least if you're looking at clothing or something, you know, you might kind of thing. So what I see is sort of a combination of what Amazon's trying to do. Now they're sort of opening a few bookstores and a few things. So it's sort of this, let's start with a digital platform and a digital position and a customer data, et cetera, and then maybe work our way back to the old kind of experience and see where that might work, especially in urban areas where you might want to have something that. But I mean, I was with the huge private equity firm a few weeks ago, Bain Capital in Boston, and they have one whole group that's just going out and buying old malls around the country, and they're turning them into like senior assisted living places, or, I mean, you know, they're trying to find other uses for, you know, all this brick and mortar kinds of things. So I don't hold a lot for that. Again, there's something about you might want to touch and feel certain things. I remember introducing Furniture.com in 2001, and the poor kid, he thought this was the smartest thing, but he forgot he didn't have a return policy. And, you know, people would get the couch or whatever and go, oh, it's really not very comfortable, you know, and so he lost all this money because he hadn't figured out how to, you know, so for certain things, you know, people still seem to want to go sit in the chair. I don't know.
What about Wayfair, right? So Wayfair's gone the other way. Furniture, Boston-based company. Talk a little bit about.
Yeah, but it's helping with design. It's helping, you know, a bunch of Dartmouth kids. You know, it started Wayfair. But again, data, good pricing, so they can offer great loyalty program that you don't have to organize around, cheap design ideas from designers that, you know, are just trying to make a name for themselves. And then sourcing, right? So they're pulling the old Walmart trick where, you know, if we can source 1 million of those coffee tables, we're going to get them down to the cheapest, you know, you can possibly, you know, get. So it becomes a real data game on all these kinds of, you know, retailers. I think retail is an interesting category to go into, but it's definitely going to be all data-driven, digital-driven, loyalty-driven. You know, you still have to have good products. It's interesting that people a little older than you also aren't going for the traditional brands. That's a big opportunity for retail, right? So that's why Procter & Gamble stocks is down, Kraft Heinz stock is down, because the younger people are saying, I don't want, you know, Heinz ketchup. I want to try this new thing from Vermont, you know, that also gives 10 cents back to, you know, I don't know, people that hunt moose. I don't know. But, so you're starting to see this sort of craftsman or boutique-y kind of thing, you know, where craft beer sort of started out and that. So I think that's going to continue. So I think there's opportunities, you know, with that. But I would have a moral purpose, something around some of this. Wayfair is struggling with that right now a little bit, but I think a good category, you know. One I probably wouldn't get into is traditional financial services. I think that's going to be completely shaken up. I was with the Bank of America. I remember we were at a dinner for Bank of America's CEO, Moynihan, and somebody said, what keeps you up at night? He goes, that I wake up and Google's a bank. You know, and it could so easily be a bank. And why would you need, I mean, how many of you guys actually go into a physical bank very often? You still do? What for? The ATM.
Like,
Why?
Actually,
Okay. But what do you transact?
I deposit a check.
All right, then you get like from your parents or something like that?
No,
So you won't use the app, you won't use,
I don't use direct deposit.
you won't use that phone. How many use that for their check? See, everybody else does. Don't feel bad, it's okay. All right. But there's less and less tellers, I mean, you have to admit. I mean, yeah. I still don't understand why colleges are teaching traditional resumes. I still don't know. I want to see resumes online. I want to see a video of you talking. I want to see, what you've done recently so that it's almost real time that you're filling in. And I always have a section called current. So you have like where you went to school, where you interned, but then have sort of current, projects you're working on, books you're reading, things like that. So that's a whole area that I think's got to change too. But fundamentally, you guys are living, well, we all are, because I think I'm still alive, where there's a huge transfer of power and money to a few new companies. So when I was growing up, the companies you bowed to were General Motors and General Electric and, AT&T and IBM. Guess what? Amazon, Google, Apple, Facebook. Complete recapitalization of the global economy through 4 companies. Fascinating to me.
If you had to look at job predictions for the next 4 years in business, which ones do you think will continue to grow? Which ones
Business categories?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think business consulting is going to have a renaissance. So I think all those boring egghead people at McKinsey and Bain and all those, but I think it's going to be micro-segmented, so you're going to see more consultants in the area of how to use software to make your business better. Marketing consulting, I think, is going to rise instead of just transactional marketing. So I think there's going to be a more diversified consulting area of business. I think that. I teach guest lecture at Tuck, it's a business school at Dartmouth, and I was amazed that in the last 3 years, Amazon has become their dominant recruiter, where it was just 3 years ago Goldman Sachs. And Goldman Sachs is bitching at Tuck right now because they put all this money, into, a building up there or lunches and programs and stuff like that, and all the kids want to be recruited by Amazon. So they're right now going around, have you heard this? Amazon's taking bids from cities to have their second headquarters built. They promised 50,000 jobs. 50,000 jobs, and most of those are higher paying jobs. So, I mean, my God. And then the second largest recruiter at Tuck, Google. So they're coming in and taking the smarties, that all used to go to Goldman Sachs or, the investment banks that, everybody thought that's where you had to go to make your dough. But, now you're seeing Facebook recruit. You're seeing a lot of that kind of stuff. I would look at mid-sized, small companies. I'd look at marketing jobs within software companies. There's a cool company I'm on the board of called Pegasystems in Cambridge. They compete with Salesforce.com. They have loads of non-software jobs, So don't think a software company, you need to really have to be a developer. You have to understand what the software does, kinds of things. So those are some of the businesses I think are interested. And then I think startups are cool because if you can find the right entrepreneur to be with, or if you want to be an entrepreneur yourself, I think it's a great ride, especially as you're younger, because you can learn so much, both mistakes and things that work. And the best startup places, believe it or not, in this country are places like Cambridge, Boston, Palo Alto, Silicon Valley, Austin, Texas, Northern Virginia, Raleigh, North Carolina. Minneapolis has some interesting entrepreneurial things. Southern New Hampshire, I think, has, I don't know what Portsmouth's doing these days, but I think Nashua and just north of Nashua at least has a few interesting things around security software, around so niches of types of businesses, kinds of things. So don't think you always have to go to a big city, as well. Does that answer your question a little?
Yes.
Yeah.
Being a
freshman in the business school here, and you being someone from a non-business background
Yep.
and was very successful in business, which I see a lot of, do you think that necessarily focusing education in like a business field, like getting a business degree?
I think it's important getting a business degree. I would always recommend it. The big thing now is to get a degree in design thinking. I'm sure that the business school here is advanced enough that they have some design thinking in the curriculum, and that's more about not the design of a product, but the design of the way you approach a problem, and the way to think. I wish I had some more business. I just went by the seat of my pants, like a lot of entrepreneurs, and I found a category that needed storytelling, which was technology marketing, or technology companies that were run by engineers who couldn't tell a story if their life depended on it. So I met a market in being able to market software and hardware companies to do that. But guess what? I sold my first companies and they were growing at 50% a year. Nobody sells a company growing that fast, all right? So if I would have known, at 41 that, one of the first rules of M&A is if you have that kind of healthy growth, do not sell your company. Wait till you start to see at least a little bit, of headwinds. So there's a lot of basics that I think. I didn't learn much about finance, and which, by the way, is okay. I remember my mother, bless her, she's passed away, but my mother would say to me, how are you so successful, Larry? And one of the things I would tell her is because I work at the things I'm really good at, and the things I'm bad at, I don't care. I hire somebody. And she thought that was terrible, that I should work really hard, to try to be better at finance, and things like that. And I wish I would at least understand the basics of the P&L. I do now, but it was all self-learning, and self-taught. So just understanding the basics of how a business is run, how to read a P&L, I mean, there's not a lot of basics, but there's enough that I think would have been very advantageous. So I think it's really good to have that. I also believe in liberal arts big time, because I think it taught me analytic thinking, and it also made me a more interesting person, and I talked to just somebody that's an electrical or a software engineer, oh my God, and they never, they don't even know who Hemingway is, or something, so it's like, God, so I think having a good business base is probably important, kind of thing. Analytical thinking is the huge thing, is to be able to analyze situations and make decisions based on what the data is telling you, because we have data. One other hint I'll give you, I can't believe my younger people that we give jobs to, we'll go into a meeting with a client prospect or even a current client, and they won't keep current of the industry or the client. It's like, and I still, look at this, I'm 62 damn years old, and the night before I have a meeting, like even before I came to this last night, I Googled UNH, not the website, I Googled what's in the news, what are the categories, what are the things. So I do that all the time for my clients or what I'm doing, and I'm amazed how many younger people just show up and, oh, I didn't know they announced that. Or it takes, 10 minutes of your time, to be that much smarter before you go into a meeting, yeah.
I was just wondering, you probably know how Netflix, most of their stuff runs on the Amazon cloud, and they just lost Disney, but they kind of have their own shows that they're starting. Do you think Netflix has a future, or do you think they're just going to kind of fade as time goes on?
No, I think all content has a future if it's interesting, and if you collect the data properly, which I think they're trying to do. And again, it's proven time and again, HBO, how many times HBO has more people try to buy it right away, when they don't have it, because they really want to see this show that their friends or everybody does. So the content's really driving that kind of thing. So I think if Netflix is smart on the back end and stays contemporary on the front end would be the creativity and the shows and the content. I think there's huge future for that. People want to be entertained. It's just that's not going to go away. So I think the better the entertainment, the better. I'm not sure about the Disney formula, but,
I was just wondering, because you have like Amazon Video, which is siphoning away their content based on bidding wars. And
Yeah.
then the content they do have runs on Amazon cloud servers.
Yeah.
So I just wondered.
well, but they're also still, I mean, look, Woody Allen's 80 years old, and they just paid him to do a movie just for Amazon. So, I mean, and he said, okay, so. Yeah.
What do you think about, like the whole issue of net neutrality, like looming in the near future?
Yeah.
Like how that's going to change marketing, like to like data collection on the internet, like marketing the whole scheme.
Well, it's not going to change data collection. What it's going to change, because there's going to be even more data, but I think it's going to change analytics. So that would be another area I would look very closely at, is analytic companies that are actually analyzing data in specific segments or categories. I think it's going to be huge, so that it can tell you that nobody's looking at this content at all on the UNH site. Then get rid of that content. Look at every kid that wants to go to UNH is downloading this video. Remember I was telling you about my daughter, and she didn't look at any of the paper things, And I go, how are you going to know what school you're going to go to? Dad, I already know the top 10 professors, the easiest courses at Dartmouth. I know everything. I go, how? I read all the blogs. I read all the, all the kids that are actually in the classes or commenting. So she knew, which dorm sucked, I mean, everything. So I think that, and then on my political side, I believe in free connectivity. I think one of the things holding back third world countries especially is their access to networks and access to the web. I think everybody should have access to the web. Can you charge more if it's faster? I guess. I guess that's where you get the AT&Ts and the Verizons, making the money. But I believe in no-cost connectivity. I think that's huge. And I think everybody has the right. I think it should be like a utility. But where the problem comes in is the moral part, right? Where the utility is being used for fake news or propaganda or things like that. And that's where, there has to be a lot of conversations about it. But just basic access, so I can Google if I'm growing up in Rwanda. Yeah,
Do you think we'll ever lose that, like, basic free connectivity? Or, like, how far to completion do you think it'll go?
I think it'll go pretty far free. Yeah, I do. I think eventually there'll be enough. That's something that Facebook tried, but it has such attention disorder that it didn't stay, and that's something Zuck actually was putting together about. He had this whole thing called, what's it called? Internet.com, and it was trying to get free, it was going to help Facebook ultimately, right? But it was free access to the web, and then, they lose interest. It's just so weird. It's like they work in giant student unions or something, and miss it. But that would have been a perfect moral purpose for Facebook, to just be one thing. We're about internet access for every human on the planet. Don't have to say anything else, right? Everybody goes, who's going to fight with that? Except if you're some really right-wing weirdo, so.
So kind of playing off that, I heard that the new iOS 11 update won't allow advertisers to track cookies.
Yeah.
Do you think, and they're obviously furious about that, do you think we're kind of being undersold how much our data is worth by big companies like Google and Amazon?
Yeah, I do. And you still have the right to flip off your cookies, You can do that. I just gave up on it, and that's why I say privacy doesn't matter, But yeah, should there be a place where I can say, okay, I got half an hour, and I want everybody that I buy from to know Larry's got a half hour free. Bring it on. I want all the deals you can give me in a half an hour, all right? And I want to see, you know what I like, you know what I don't like, So sure, But again, I mean, but collection of data too becomes a valuable innovation resource as well. Google knows how many people are Googling about flu symptoms in San Diego. I mean, they share that with the CDC. So you start to figure out new advances in flu, kinds of things. So there's a lot of good things. I'm an optimist about all this, by the way. I really believe that. But I meet so many people, especially my age, that are so pessimistic about technology, about data, that it's all going to be used badly, and I'm just, no. I love this woman doctor, plus she's beautiful. But anyway, she was on my Oxford debate team. I was telling Ian about, but she invented a company called Da Vinci Systems. You should check them out sometime. It's one of the first successful robotic surgeons, and all it does is take out gallbladders. It sounds gross, but it's been like 99.9% accurate, stuff like that. So I didn't even bring up robotics. That's a whole area of jobs. Oh my gosh, different robotics companies are popping up everywhere, Yeah. Robotic bank tellers, just for you,
Maybe. I guess kind of going back to the Netflix topic a little bit, we're at an era where, immediate consumption is so demanded and we want it, right away.
Yeah.
And maybe live events are one of the few that might surpass that, but do you think that attending live events is going to become obsolete because of VR?
I don't know, or gun shooters, but I think one of the main reasons for live events is I think actually people like being around other people that like the same thing. So I think that's a powerful draw. You all like the Patriots, or you all like the Bills, or you all like the Broncos, or whatever, or you all like, Kenny Chesney, things like that. So I think it's going to be the combination. If I had to boil down the future of marketing to a couple things, it would be just digital marries experiential. So it would be, sort of events, and that would include retail as an experience, and, digital. But as things get really, I don't want, maybe it's because I'm older, but, my daughters and son still like going to a Patriots game, and I hate it. I really hate going down to Foxborough. The traffic sucks, and, if the weather's bad, there's not a lot of coverage there. It takes like 3 hours to get home, and I'm like, and I have a beautiful family room with a giant screen, and all the beer I can drink, and, junk food that I can eat. Why would I go, to the stadium? So, and as that gets even more real, the screen technology just keeps getting better and better and better, right? The sound keeps getting better, keeps getting cheaper and cheaper. So you're like, wow,
So based on what you just said, what did you tell the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Pittsburgh Steelers, I've been very focused with the Steelers on loyalty and engagement of their core audiences. They also have a goal of reaching women, to get more women, not just these nutty men that love the Steelers, but this will be sexist, all right, I'm sorry, but we had the best looking Steelers contest, and that brought in a lot of women that over the years had decided who the best looking players were, and they had a vote. And then we also developed a game. Anybody play fantasy football? So the idea, which we haven't launched yet, the idea is to have fantasy football of just the Steelers. So you build a team like of Terry Bradshaw will be your quarterback, but you might have Antonio Brown as a receiver. So if you're taking it across generations, and the idea was so that the younger people could learn who the heroes were of the older generations and who the best, and we use the statistics from then, from that week, kind of thing. So we're doing stuff like that. And then we're also doing, finding out through data, through analytics, where they're most popular, we call it diaspora, but people that don't live in Pittsburgh that still are ridiculous Pittsburgh fans, and what bar they go to in Nashua to watch the Steelers, every Sunday, so that we can reach out, text them with little gifts on their phone. And then we're playing around with search engine technology a lot, because they're really, all these NFL teams, like a lot of sports teams, are really getting angry that when you, like if you Google right now, who's the quarterback for Pittsburgh? Roethlisberger. So if you Google, you want to get a Big Ben jersey for your nephew, whatever, 3 different retail online shops come up before the Steelers' official shop or the NFL. So like Dick's Sporting Goods, you know, and because they've been smarter at getting keywords, they've been smarter about, you know, analytics than the Steelers have been. So there's a lot around e-commerce that trying to do with them. But they're not a huge customer, but since I know Art Rooney well, he's a good guy. And he's trying to do things more
So
digitally.
piggybacking that, obviously very controversial, but as from your PR side of you, how do you consult the owners about kneeling, locking arms, flag? Where do you come out? How do you use the data to help them drive in some of those decisions?
Yeah, that's a tough one, Ian, because that's not my area of expertise, which is, you know, sort of crisis PR or, you know, that. But, you know, like I told Art, I said, it's too bad we have a president like this. But anyway, you know, and he seems to be able to pick things that have enough people that follow it or agree with it. And, you know, so I don't know. If I was the NFL, what I would do is I'd stand for the national anthem and then take a knee, or do some combination of being respectful to what his problem was, but also the right to protest what they were protesting, I think, is right. So, but you know, we have a lot of divisiveness right now. It's tough, and you know what? Those guys need to be responsible. They're millionaires, these guys, and they're 25 years old. You know, that's both a good thing and that's a tough thing, you know, too. So on some of them.
And also just going back to your first company, so providing PR for technology companies wasn't really done at all. So talk about sort of that, a little bit about the journey and, you know, what worked and what didn't work and those dark days. And, you know, you always hear about successes, and clearly you've had, you know, an amazing multiple rides, but talk about sort of those early days as the small company. And
yeah, the early days, what always worked was metaphor storytelling. So an example, I was sitting in my office in Cambridge, and I got a call from a guy named Mitch Kapoor, and he had started an early software company called Lotus, it was called, way before you guys. But it was the Microsoft of the 80s and probably most of the 90s. And lost its way for a lot of reasons. But anyway, their first product was a spreadsheet. Everybody heard of Excel? Well, they had the first Excel. It was called 123. And it just so happens, so Mitch asked me to come take a look at this. And there was this thing called the PC, the personal computer. And IBM had made a lot of them, and nobody was buying them. And it was, you know what it was? It was like the first washing machines, but nobody had invented detergent yet. So it was like, well, why do I want to buy a washing machine, okay? And I likened the detergent to the software and the computer to the washing machine. And he had me come over, and all he had in his office was a carpet, Oriental carpet, an IBM PC, and a futon. And he was barefoot and had a Hawaiian shirt on. And he said, come on, lay down on the futon, Larry, and we'll look at 123 on the computer. And I said, well, gee, it just looks sort of like, you know, a general ledger. I'm not really that business oriented, whoever was asking about the business kind of thing. And he said, well, do you know anybody that's an accountant, Larry? I said, yeah, my grandpa was an accountant. And he goes, did you ever go to his accounting office? Now, you guys are going to freak out about this, but how they used to do accounting, all right, before they had personal computers and software, they had a bunch of people, and they had these giant desks, and they had this long pieces of paper, and they had yardsticks, and they made all these columns, and they would actually write like a general ledger. You know, it would be Larry Weber, $29.95, you know, received for his electric bill, blah, 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 blah. You know, like, I mean, unbelievable, right? And now and then my grandfather would come home and he'd be really mad, you know, and it'd be like, Grandma, why is he so mad? Oh, somebody must have made a mistake. And if he's really mad, somebody made a mistake like many weeks or a month ago. And you know why that mattered? Because if it was done a month ago, they had to erase every line going back a month, because if you added up the columns, they were all wrong. Bingo, the electronic spreadsheet that you go in and go, oh, guess what? We can check if everything's accurate right away. And if we have to go back and change something, we go back and change something. So all we had to do was tell an evolutionary story of, gee, here's the problem, right? And now look at what this does and how this solves your problem in more of everyday work terms kind of thing than trying to be whiz-bang, sort of technology. And we just use that sort of model for almost everything that we introduced. Now, next was an interesting one for Steve Jobs, because Steve didn't care about the inside. I don't know if you guys know, but he was fired from his own company, and he started a company called Next, and then he went back and became even more of the legend that he was. But I worked with him there, and he was more intrigued with the way it looked than anything else, and he wanted like sort of the architectural digest of computers, and and you couldn't tell him anything because he was such a autocrat, but didn't believe much in market research either. But we again told the architecture story of how eventually you're going to want beautiful screens in your home, and you're going to want to have things that are look so pretty because the technology is going to be there. So again, it was all about storytelling, but it also was about really creating a community that wasn't there before. So Forrester Research started next to me. So did Julia Child, was on the other side of us in Cambridge. She was doing a cookbook on baking. That was sort of a weird thing. But then we had the publishers who are now publishing for the first time. Anybody go on TechCrunch? See, that evolved out of Computer World, which was a physical magazine many, many years ago. So there were these ecosystems, which is another thing I would study if I were you guys, is the power of ecosystems as they create powerful business. And the strongest one in the last 30 years has been the technology ecosystem of software, hardware, those kinds of things. So I would study those. One more question, because I gotta get going, I think. Yeah. Two more here. Okay. Go ahead.
If you don't mind me asking, what do you think your biggest failure and biggest success were?
In business?
I take it as you want.
Raising 3 good kids, I think, was pretty good. I thought I'd give my wife credit for that. My 2 dogs are so stupid, so that's a big failure. I don't know. They're totally not trained, at all. But I think business-wise, I think the launch of HTML we handled extremely well, explaining a complex concept, which was basic, graphical interface on top of the ARPANET, or the internet, to create the World Wide Web, and somehow conveying that it was going to be easy to use, and that we got a lot of awards for introducing it wasn't a giant then, a software company called SAP, and that was about integrating global finance. That was a big deal. I think LinkedIn, we did pretty well there for something that nobody really needed, kind of thing. And then, even though I wasn't really part of it, there are things that I like, because when I built Weber Shandwick, which was the largest PR firm in the world after I bought other companies, and I sold that's owned by a big New York firm. But it was learning things like we had launched a product called Rogaine, which was supposed to help guys that were losing their hair, like me, have hair grow back, so that you could be nice looking and sexy again, I guess. And we put it out there with traditional marketing, and we failed terribly. Nobody wanted to buy Rogaine. It was expensive, and for some reason, guys weren't breaking the door down at CVS to buy Rogaine. And then finally, this woman on our marketing team says to me in New York, said, Larry, you know what the problem is? And I go, no, what's the problem? She said, when you're selling a product that's more intimate to someone, you need someone that's really trusted to recommend that product to someone. So you need to get to the girlfriend or the wife that's going to suggest that, maybe, honey, you might want to try this Rogaine. So we put together a PR program that just went to salons, all right, where women went, no guys went, and with coupons for Rogaine. And we had a woman talk about how this was really working, that guys that were losing their hair, it was coming back. Rogaine took off. It was unbelievable to me that, that something that, nefarious, would do. So, I don't know, failure. New Coke was a huge failure that my PR company, the bigger one, Weber Shandwick, was involved with. They decided to screw around with the recipe of Coke. Yeah, that was not a good idea, I don't know, Sam Adams, I think that was pretty good. We did, again, I wasn't personally involved, but that was really launching the first craft beer. And I thought that was well done. Other failures. A lot of failures in financial, one thing I can tell you is being on the service side of the business, all the great successes had a great client. They were really invested in helping us. And all the failures, we were treated like, we're paying you money, you go get the results. And that makes it a lot harder. That's like having the doctor say, lose 30 pounds, see me in a year, and I'm like, oh, shit. I don't know how I'm gonna, I need help, doing that. And so, anyway.
Great. Join me to thank Larry. Really tremendous. So, thank you so much.